it was always taught throughout the course content and enforced through the quizzes and sectionals that we had, how important it is to understand what we're looking at, first of all. We have to look at it as a sum of the total time we are taking to solve that question simply. And I believe that does go down when you are just more well versed or you have a better understanding of what you are looking at. So I believe sectional marks were one of the biggest parts of my prep and how I have improved. I believe the biggest impact sectionals had on all three sections for me was the two biggest things that matter, accuracy and time. There's no other way to put it. So it was extremely helpful for me because it helped me reach my pretty high mock score. It wasn't just about preparing for an exam. It was entirely different from any other exams that I have taken in the past or probably will take in the future. I believe that what I learned in GMAT, I can definitely apply in real life.
Welcome to today's video debrief session where we have with us Shivam, who got a brilliant 685, a humongous 140 improvement to a 685 with the brilliant DI84, Q86 and a V82. So congratulations, Shivam. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thanks, Rashmi.
So Shivam, before we
Good to
get
be
into
here.
your journey, amazing improvement. As I said, 140 points is, what stories are made out of, and it's really, really good. And we'll talk about it shortly. Before that, please tell our viewers something about yourself.
So my name is Shivam Paul. I am currently working at a pretty big PBC MNC. I have around 4.5 years of experience. I I have been on the verge of deciding what to do with my career for the last 1 year, after which I decided that I would like to pursue an MBA. So that's where the decision of what we want to do, whether I wanted to do it in India or abroad, what is the test I should take, because major decisions, I believe they took me more time than they should have. Um, then eventually I zeroed down to onto the GMAT and then onto choosing who do I how do I want to pursue my prep, and that's how we end up here.
Got it. So, Shivam, you mentioned your first core mock score was a 545, and from there
Yeah,
it was your first attempt to 685, right?
yeah,
So amazing improvement. Your DI starting score was what, DI 67. From there, a good 17-point improvement to a brilliant DI 84. Amazing achievement. You had a bad day
yeah,
in verbal, otherwise, the score would have been way better. So tell me,
yeah.
Shivam, getting into the preparation, what was the biggest challenge that you faced? Of course, you needed a huge improvement to get to your
Hmm.
target. But other than that, what is it and how did you, choose e-GMAT to help you with those challenges?
So once I started looking into, of course, we can get the syllabus and stuff anywhere. It's readily available online, what we have to study, what we don't have to study. But personally, I believed being a working professional, I needed structure because I was ready to devote, let's say, 2 or 3 hours per weekday and longer on weekends. But personally, I believe that the structure, having some sort, because I did try to learn on my own. I got the offline books, the official books. I finished. I think I went through all of those books pretty fast. But then I did not. I was not personally feeling as if I had made a lot of improvement, having not taken a mock yet. So at that point, I started feeling like I spoke to some friends who had earlier given the GMAT, and I felt like the structure would definitely help me. That is where I started looking into courses, basically, e-GMAT as well as the other companies that provide prep courses. So I looked into it. I think I spoke to 2 or 3 of the, I don't know what to call them, consultants who speak with us before we decide on the course, who tell us what the course is about, how we are going to go about it, the duration, and all that. Spoke to 2 or 3 people, and so I mean 2 or 3 separate companies, and I eventually came down to e-GMAT because the duration was roughly what I was targeting. It was in my budget, and I liked what I saw in the trial as well as the number of marks we were getting and the sort of structure that I was seeing in the course. So that's
Got
how
it.
I zeroed down on e-GMAT, and that's how I started. Um, Speaking about initial difficulties, I believe one of the big things was uh, being an engineer, growing up in India with our education system, and being somebody who likes to do math. Um, it felt like it was a natural thing for me to try to get every question correct, and that naturally flowed to verbal and DI to some extent as well. Not just quant, because it's like if I'm if I'm looking at a problem, I want to solve it, and I want to solve it correctly, irrespective of how much time it takes. I don't think I have taken any such exams where timing was such an important factor as it is here. So that was one of the big challenges. Basically, to summarize it, would be learning the GMAT way to not to learn, but rather to give the exam, because it is quite different from other exams that we might have given earlier. And that I learned further as we went on with the journey of prep and then mocks and then the final attempt. But yeah, that was one of my biggest,
Got it.
yeah,
Got it. So, Shivam, what you rightly said was, one thing that was needed was structure, especially when you're looking for such a huge improvement from where you're starting. Structure becomes important, otherwise, you get all over the place, right? You're
right.
doing verbal one day, you're doing quant one day, you're doing
Yeah,
DI one day, and that is where I think the study plan anchored you, which gave you
right.
that this is where you start, this is what you do, and this is where I think the most important part was how you approached your prep following the three-step approach to learning, which is you worked on building your foundation, followed by cementing, and then sectional mocks, and then finally the mocks, right? So,
Yeah.
what value did the PSP, the personalized study plan, play, and what was the value of this particular structure in really taking you to that, this level of
Yeah.
improvement?
So I believe it's been 6 months almost. I believe our PSP is created on the basis of what we score initially. I
Mm-hmm.
think we can either enter like the score of a cold mock or take one as part of e-GMAT mocks, then enter that score, as well as then we have to enter a target score. So based on that, calculating on the basis of what the difference in each section is, it creates a personalized plan for us, of course, according to our timeline as well, which then demarcates like how much time we need for each section. Of course, it'll be in number of weeks, number of months in that. So it added significantly to the structure of just it was an added component of the structure of my prep, because let's say inside a section, okay, when I open the course, I can see topic A, topic B, topic C through Z. This is the order that I'm supposed to do it in.
Mm-hmm.
We can choose to do it in any order, but of course there had to have been some thought that went into deciding that order of in which we should learn. Let's say take the example of quant. Um, Having said that, the PSP was added structure in a way it told me what I should do when I should do,
Mm-hmm.
and there were other factors of it. It shows you how much time you're actually giving versus what you have committed. Many other things like that, and that the study plan includes not just what you are studying, but includes your tests, your sections. So it's very comprehensive, so to say, where it starts off with your prep, and for each section for quant, verbal, and DI, it ends with the so we have cementing first and then sections, and right down to test day, like pre-test day prep. I can take my example where
Mm-hmm.
I took longer on certain sections, so I was not able to adhere to it down to the T. But I don't think that is necessary. That is a very necessary thing, as long as we are
Mm-hmm.
still following that structure. And as I think we'll talk about later, I was in touch with Rashmi as she was my mentor, and so deviating from it was of course, because end of the day it's a personalized plan, right? So it can be personalized further in that sense.
Got it. Got it. So, Shivan, coming to, you let's look at DI, wherein you had the maximum improvement, as I said, a 17-point improvement. So you did DI towards the end, right? And I'm
Yeah,
sure you were antsy that, oh my God, DI needs the maximum improvement, and here I am doing verbal, I'm
yeah.
doing quads. So, but you were somebody who trusted in the plan. You did your verbal, you did your quad. So, what was the importance of doing that before moving to DI?
So as some DI, we can very simply say DI is a combination of the skills that we learn during verbal and quant. Uh, to me personally, since I like doing math, since I like doing quant, I would say I treated quant as sort of a reset. When I was very done with verbal, I would do some math to reset. So DI,
Mm-hmm.
to a good extent, is a combination of quant and verbal. So doing it last ensures that you have the necessary ability and understanding and whatever else you would need to succeed in DI by the time you reach it.
Mm-hmm.
So
Got it.
even we can logically say why verbal comes before quant, because of course quant is verbal is a different beast compared to quant, but we need some
Mm-hmm.
level of comprehension. We might not be getting very complicated quant questions But even then, developing that ability in verbal first, developing that knack of understanding things quickly to an extent does help in quant, and eventually both of those together help in DI.
Got it. Got it. So in DI, you started by, you learned the concept, you learned the approach, because approach is something that you mentioned was very, very important in the first
Yeah,
goal mock. You were just trying to sort of read the question and trying to figure out how to solve it,
yeah,
and ended up taking a lot of time. And this is where owning the data set approach comes, wherein, you look at the
yeah.
data set, you really process it even before looking at the question. So what role did that play, and how important is it to really take your DI to that 98th, 99th percentile?
Hmm. So, as Ashmi mentioned, I think we've spoken about this earlier as well. When I started off in my cold mock in DI, there were few issues. One of them being I did not. I knew I was going to see some graphs and tails, but other than that, I barely knew anything. So
Mm-hmm,
essentially, everything I was reading, we can say I was reading it as sort of like a quant problem or a puzzle,
mm-hmm,
where it's like I am reading a word problem and I have to solve it, but it's not necessarily a math question in the first place.
mm-hmm.
It's more of a logical thing. We don't need to involve math so much, things like that. So as we through the course content for DI, as we focus on every individual type of question, let's say it's DS or it's TPA, MSRs.
Mm-hmm.
So it was always taught throughout the course content and enforced through the quizzes and sectionals that we had, how important it is to understand what we're looking at, first of all. And as Rashmi said, that owning the data set. So keeping aside, let's say, data sufficiency, because it's comparatively a smaller piece of information that you might not need to spend as much time on,
Mm-hmm.
not going into the specifics of how you solve a DS question, but MSR, TPA, it's very important that we understand what we're dealing first, because before going into what are we trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
Like something I followed in MSR I changed the approach after I started giving sectionals. But something I was doing is I was reading each tab one by one. Then I started first looking at what are the tabs, like what does the tab say.
Mm-hmm.
Then understanding how the tab is related to what the heading is.
Mm-hmm.
So things like that. So it's extremely important in all sorts of
Mm-hmm.
DI questions to understand what we are dealing with in the first place before we move on to what do we need to find out.
Got it.
So that
I think,
approach is
yeah,
supremely helpful for that.
I think the biggest concern with this approach is you think you're spending too much time. As in, you want
Right.
to rush through, you're like, oh, I haven't even looked at the question. I'm still going through the data set. So, what does it do to your overall time management there? Does it actually make you take longer, or?
Not so much, because we can't look at it we shouldn't be looking at it in isolation, as in how much time we are spending in reading the question versus how much time we are actually, let's say it's a TPA. So
Mm-hmm,
essentially we can say we have been given the information, basically the information block. So we
mm-hmm,
have the time we need to read that and understand that. Then we have to get into what do we need to find out and then find out. We
mm-hmm,
can think of it as three steps. So how I think of it is we can't look at it in isolation that I'm taking this much time to just understand what is given to me
mm-hmm.
versus then I'm moving on to figuring out what is asked and then finding out what is asked. We have to look
Got
at
it.
it we have to look at it as the sum of the total time we are taking to solve that question simply. And I believe that does go down when you are
Mm.
just more well versed or you have a better understanding of what you are looking at.
Got it. I
And
have a
that,
nice image
yeah,
to go with that, because this is your GI graph. I
yeah,
don't know if you remember this or not. You can see that through your prep, the accuracy improved from this 56%, and these are, you know, hard plus medium questions, no easy questions at all, improved from
yeah,
56% to a 73%, but your time steadily came down to that 2 minute
yeah,
kind of a mark, right?
yeah,
Hmm. So that spending the time upfront is sort of like front loading your time, but that helps you with better
yeah,
accuracy. And
definitely. Somewhat, I would say this approach is somewhat similar to RCs. Of course, RCs
mm,
is a very debated topic where people debate between whether we should skim or whether we should give it a good amount of time upfront.
mhm,
I have always stuck with giving it the time upfront because, see, if an RC has four questions, it's possible that on the third question it might be something difficult, and let's say I've given 6 minutes to the first question and like
mhm,
6 minutes to reading the passage and then
mhm.
moving on to the questions. So it's very possible that on the third question it might be a difficult question and you will take more than your mental time of more than a minute.
Yep.
It's not it's not something that can't happen. But even then, it's entirely possible that because you gave that time initially to properly understand, and of course, not going into the details. Like you don't need to note down or remember the details. Understanding what the passage is about, what it's talking about. Often it would be the case that out of the four questions, probably three of them you would get it under 40, 50 seconds. And
Mm.
that wouldn't have happened um, if, let's say, we were skimming it initially, and then, of course, it will differ from passage to passage. But I believe this is the better approach because it reduces your overall RC time. End of the day,
Got
we
it.
have to look at the sum, and that
Mm.
translates into DA questions as well, where if we spend, like even taking the example of DS, if we don't push the question as I believe the approach is called, taking the question up to the simplest form to simplify what we are trying to look for. So if we are not doing that, I believe it does take more time if we just start jumping into the statements and trying
Mhm.
to solve it. I believe
Got
that
it.
applies all through DI.
Yes, that is very, very important. So, Shivam, now coming to the next stage, as in you did the course, you did cementing, and then of course you transitioned to the sectional mocks. So tell me what value did the sectional mocks add in your preparation, and how did you leverage them to finally get to this level?
Yeah, so I believe sectional marks were one of the biggest parts of my prep and how I have improved. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
because I often went into, like personally, I went into, even though my cold mark verbal score was very high, when I started doing cementing in verbal, I was not getting the accuracy I wanted or I was targeting for in
Mm-hmm.
CRs primarily because that is the section I faced issues with. Uh, so as I kept on solving questions and as we eventually moved on to sectionals, I believe sectionals, the biggest impact sectionals had on all three sections for me uh, was the two biggest things that matter, accuracy and time.
Mm-hmm.
There's no other way to put it because uh, it's a different thing being solving individually solving questions. Like even you take a quiz on Neuron or you take a quiz anywhere else, it's a different thing solving 10 questions untimed, sort of that. It's just a different thing mentally, I believe,
Mm-hmm.
than sitting for an entire sectional and trying to simulate what you would do in the 45 minutes of your actual test.
Got it.
So
Got it.
maybe you are focusing too much on certain types of questions, but not so much on other types of questions. Maybe you're getting certain types of questions wrong in the tests.
Mm-hmm.
So it was extremely helpful for me because it helped me reach my pretty high mock scores eventually. I believe I attribute a lot of that just because I was constantly taking sectionals
Mm-hmm.
to drill down my timing. Um,
Mm-hmm.
because timing at the end of the day it comes down to practice. If you are
Mm.
in you might have the ability, but if you are not solving your behavioral issues and how you perform and how you solve in the test, the timing will not come.
Got
So
it. Got it.
so yeah.
Yeah, I think first about fine-tuning your test-taking skills, fine-tuning your time
Yeah,
management skills. Because by the time we reached sectional mocks, it was not that you had to learn to tackle any new kind of questions. It was how do you
right.
ensure that you're expressing your ability, right?
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, sectional mocks played a big role there. So Shivam, now coming to the test day, how confident were you getting into the test of scoring well, and what happened in the test?
Yeah, considering it was my first attempt, I was pretty nervous. I think prior to, I think in the last 10 days leading up to the test, I spoke with Rashmi like twice or thrice regarding what we should not do, how we need to be relaxed because it's not uh, even moving, inching closer to test day. It's not about how much we know because the syllabus is not that big. The
Mm-hmm.
abilities required are not that great. It is all about how you manage yourself on test day, how you manage your mindset, how you sit through each section. So going into test day, I had a bit of travel on the day, almost a 2 hour cab ride. So I
Mm-hmm.
was fairly nervous. I think I had a 11:30 slot. So I was going into it. I was fairly nervous. My chosen order at the time was VQDI. Um, I believe in hindsight, I have spoken to Rashmi a few times about it, and that might have been the undoing, considering verbal was the section that gave me the most anxiety. So and that's how in my score verbal does not reflect my
Yeah.
ability at all. So since I believe the test center was a test center, I went to an official center, so it was a very good experience. As I mentioned, test day I was pretty anxious, and as I started verbal, I could not get in the zone to solve questions because uh, as people anyone who has done GMAT verbal, taken proper
Mm-hmm.
verbal tests and all will know that you have to be in a certain mindset, in a certain zone to be able to do it. And
Yeah.
I've spoken to Rashmi about that. earlier as well that let's say she would always advise me to take mocks or sectionals or basically tests of any sort, let's say after a
Mm-hmm.
long work day or even in the evenings if I have had work through the day, because I'm just not, it might be harder for me to get into the zone. I believe something similar happened on that day,
Mm-hmm.
taking
Mm-hmm.
verbal first on my first GMAT attempt. Um, I couldn't really settle down into verbal, and that the score reflects that. But by the time I
Mm-hmm.
reached quant and DI, they went rather well. I expected to do better in quant. I believe
Mm-hmm.
that score does not reflect what I can do in quant. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, quant and DI went comparatively well, but verbal was the one that brought my score down on the testing.
Got it. But the good thing, Shivam, is you were able to bounce back from verbal.
Yeah,
Somewhere you knew that verbal was not going per the plan, but you
yeah,
did not let that impact your quant and DI score, which is a really, really good thing. Otherwise, we would
yeah.
be looking at,
Yeah,
a lower
right.
score, right?
Definitely. This is
Yeah.
something that I had spoken with Rashmi about, that how important it was to reset, not just between sections, but even between questions.
Mm-hmm.
Because I had, it sometimes happened during mocks that I had this tendency of, let's say, if I encounter one or two difficult questions, then I found it harder to reset and let that not affect whatever n number of questions I have remaining, whether it's I'm towards the end of the section or towards the beginning. It's something that we spoke at length about, how I need to reset, be able to get myself back into the race to finish the rest of my test better. So
Got it.
yeah, definitely reset is very important. Learning to do that.
Got it. So, Shivam, it has been quite a journey, right? So, looking back, are there some, takeaways that you want to share with the other people still preparing for GMAT?
Yeah, fair bit of things. I was just recently
Mm-hmm.
discussing with Rashmi how this wasn't just about preparing for an exam. It was entirely different from any other exams that I have taken in the past
Mm-hmm.
or probably will take in the future. It was sort of the last 6 months were sort of taught me more things outside academia that I wouldn't have expected. Um, there are a number of takeaways. Time management, I believe that what I learned in GMAT, I can definitely apply in real life
Mm-hmm.
where we need time management when you're doing anything, whether it be work, whether it be other things. So managing that, and something that I learned through my attempts was that it's important to give your best. There might be, because we don't complete this in a very short time, right? We don't do it in 1 month or 2 months. Barely anyone, I guess, would be doing that. Mostly, most people would be doing like 4 months, 6 months, something like that. So it's very important to stay motivated as well. There will be dips inevitably, but learning how to improve upon them, how to bounce back from them, because I did face my fair share of when, let's say for example, I was not doing well on CR. I was pretty demotivated. I've spoken to Rashmi about it as well. I was pretty demotivated. I had no idea how to proceed further if I was not getting
Mm-hmm.
my accuracy up. But all of that improved.
Yeah.
I believe I did significantly well. Um, Later on, I got my
Mm.
accuracy up, timing up. So yeah, as you said, it's been quite a journey.
I
Um,
know.
yeah,
And what you rightly said, it's not going to be a linear journey. So you should be
most
in
definitely.
it with you need to get that spirit up when things are not going so well, because end of the
Yeah,
day, things will work out well if you have your
yeah.
heart and soul and hard
Because
work into the
if we've
thing.
started the journey, means we are committed to it. So we just
Exactly.
have to keep that commitment up. Again, people talk about how important it is to maintain consistency through, a feature of the PSP was that we used to see whether we are completing our rings on each day to the pertaining to the number of hours
Mm-hmm.
I've committed on my
Mm-hmm.
weekdays and weekends. So it was an added motivation for me where I could see, oh, I have maybe I'm tired, but I have 20 minutes left to do. So I would just do a quick chapter to finish that. So definitely, it's taught me a lot of things consistency, because
That's nice.
honestly, it was hard, especially when you're doing the course content. It's hard to keep at it every day for two,
Mm-hmm.
3 hours for over 3.5, 4 months until you start taking the tests. Believe it
Right.
becomes slightly different because it's not as as strenuous or as information on yourself anymore, because you're taking a test, you're doing the analysis, you're solving questions. It's a different experience than learning. But yeah, being staying true to the process, doing the best that you can, you will improve. It's not. And a lot of the GMAT, I think, as you would agree, is about managing what we do behaviorally. Because
Mm-hmm.
ability-wise, it's not content-wise, it might not be that difficult of a test. So it's about once we develop our ability, how we manage what we are doing. and how we're approaching the real test.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So thank you so much, Shivam. That was really good nuggets of wisdom. So you know, I always tell whenever I do this, it's a bittersweet moment for me. Sweet because yes, we got a score wherein we're doing this. Bitter because you know we're not going to be meeting so often
Yeah,
anymore, right?
yeah.
Yeah. But all the very best, Shivam, for all the next steps, and congratulations again. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you. Nice to meet you. It was great discussing this with you. It's been quite a journey.